devoted mother working to carve out a new life.
She's very religious, believes in family.
She would help anyone.
Is murdered in her own home.
She had clearly been under attack when she reached for the phone.
It was devastating.
Detectives follow the evidence down a twisted path.
Who was this person?
He's giving envelopes of money to Monica.
In her mind, they were going to be married until death do them part.
After a number of suspects emerge,
They jokingly referred to themselves as the Orange Shorts Society.
He cried, but it was very fake.
Monica told me if anything ever happens to me, that he was responsible.
the killer is someone no one could have predicted.
The whole thing was just surreal.
And I'm like, oh my God, you almost got away with it.
Glenville, Pennsylvania. It's a small, proud community where everyone knows their neighbor by name.
It wasn't really even a town, it was rural. Good, decent people. You could just keep the doors open on warm days, sitting on the porch and just relaxing and enjoying the peace.
It's a rural area in central Pennsylvania, so it's not typical for a violent crime to occur, and if it does occur, it's an abnormality.
On a spring afternoon in 2010, that peaceful atmosphere is interrupted when dispatchers at York County Control get a mysterious call.
Someone had dialed 911,
911.
and no one was saying anything.
Hello?
The dispatcher that received the call was inquiring, hello, is anyone there? So the protocol at the time was hang up and call it back. They received a busy signal, so the phone was off the hook. They dispatched Southwestern Regional Police. A patrolman entered the residence and announced himself that he was with law enforcement. And as he made a right into the living room area, he discovered the body. There was a lot of blood around her head, as well as on the floor.
A forensics team arrives within minutes, with 2 homicide detectives following close behind.
The victim was found lying in almost like a fetal position.
They find the victim's driver's license, which identifies her as 55-year-old Monica Schmeier. Closer inspection of the body reveals she met a violent end.
She had clearly been under attack when she reached for the phone to try to call for help.
There was a telephone with the receiver off just above her body, lying there, and there was some blood on the 9 and the 1 of the telephone.
Very close to Monica's body, detectives find an important piece of evidence.
We located a small shell casing that was lying on the ground. We searched for a firearm or ammunition, a holster, anything that would lead us to believe that there would have been a gun in the house. There was none located.
The forensics team pores over the crime scene, hoping to turn up something that can help them understand the crime.
We did fingerprinting, we did photography, we searched around the house. There was nothing there to lead us to believe that it was a home invasion, and it was very mysterious to us as far as, what happened here.
Another detail suggests Monica wasn't the victim of a robbery gone wrong.
We did locate some cash in the home that were in white envelopes that were on the bookshelf. We found cash in bins that were packed up that you could visibly see as you walked around the house.
The envelopes we found were very easy to see. Some of them would have maybe $100 in them. Some of them only had a few dollars. Each one of them had a designation on the envelope, like to the church or for a bill or something like that.
Investigators begin collecting forensic evidence for further analysis.
The evidence we collected in the home consisted of the money envelopes, the blood evidence, scrapings from the phone, from the floor, and fingerprints. a Rolodex was found. On the Rolodex, we found some close contact information.
While forensics continue their work at the scene, detectives track down Monica's family to deliver the terrible news.
Monica had 2 adult daughters, Veronica and Elsa, and they were not living at home at the time of her killing. Veronica was in Florida, and Elsa was out of the country.
Both daughters are stunned by the murder and say that their mother was known for her charity, which had only increased since their parents' divorce.
Monica Schmeier's daughters said that she would help anyone, extremely generous, volunteered her time in the community, was a devout Catholic, very involved in her church.
Monica's brother, Eric, is no less shocked when police inform him of his sister's murder.
It was April 1st, which is April Fool's Day. You know, I'm thinking is this a prank? You know, what, my sister's been killed? It was devastating. Monica was not only my sister, she was my next door neighbor.
Detectives ask Eric to tell them more about his sister, in the hope that something from her past will point them toward her killer.
We were raised in a Catholic family in northern New Jersey. We had a simple, frugal life, 5 siblings. I was the eldest and she was the 4th. She was the smartest out of all 5 of us. Monica was very studious and very determined. Even when she was a little kid, she was a bookworm. She aced everything through college, grammar school, high school. Monica studied like crazy and went to medical school. She was going to do her internship. She was starting it in New York City.
As Monica was chasing her dreams, her life took an unexpected turn.
She met John Schmeier, and they fell in love. She became pregnant, and that was a surprise to both of them.
The young couple got married in 1981 and began building a happy life together.
Monica became a mother, and she felt that she had really found her niche. And she just loved being a mother. John, he went and got his degrees, and he became an ophthalmologist and was offered a position in Hanover, Pennsylvania. They asked me to come along and be the office manager.
With John busy at work, Monica focused on motherhood and let her own career go by the wayside.
She was supposed to do her internship, then she got pregnant again. I don't know how expected that was, but she loved it. Her focus became being a mother. She was dedicated to John and her 2 daughters. A nice wooden house with 60 acres. That's what she wanted more than anything. John gave that to her.
Over the years, John's career thrived, but the couple's marriage began to suffer. In 2003, after 22 years of marriage, he asked Monica for a divorce.
She was devastated. She was so much in love with John. She's very religious, believes in family, you know, so she didn't want to agree to divorce. She got suicidal and she went into a depression. All she did was just cry, and you could see how miserable she felt. I was worried about Monica, but I felt if Monica needed any help, I was right down the street.
Finally, in 2008, after 5 years of resisting, Monica agreed to sign the divorce papers. Their unusual settlement agreement helps investigators understand why Monica had envelopes of cash stashed around her house.
John was paying Monica $1,700 a month in alimony. He had also given her the family home and much of their savings because it was him who wanted that divorce, not her.
There was alimony being paid, but he did so in cash, which was weird because Monica didn't have a bank account.
Monica Schmeier did not like to use banks, didn't trust them, preferred to keep the cash in her home.
But with Monica having no other source of income, John grew wary of the arrangement.
John was pissed off that he had to pay her in cash. He was upset that he had to pay her bills for her. He paid for everything.
Could John's resentment have grown so great he wanted Monica dead? When detectives ask Eric, his answer is shocking.
Monica told me if anything ever happens to me, John is responsible because she was scared that John would do something to hurt her.
Coming up, does a grieving spouse have something to hide?
He cried, but there were no tears. It was very fake.
A surprising lead sends the case in a new direction.
What struck me most is how utterly random it was.
And the truth blindsides everyone.
It was like an aha moment for me. Why did you lie?
York County Police investigating the horrific murder of Monica Schmeier have reason to be suspicious of Monica's ex-husband, John.
We had information from Eric, Monica's brother, that Monica had stated that if anything ever happened to her, that John would be responsible for that.
Investigators quickly head over to John's house. When they tell him about Monica's murder, they're surprised by his behavior.
John reacted in a way that was very awkward and very unusual, something that in my years I'd never seen. Oh my God, he put his hand across his chest.
Maybe some of it was a little fake. Maybe the clutching of the heart was a little fake.
He began to cry, would probably be a stretch. There were no tears. Myself, I do believe it was very fake. He covered his face, would look up and see if we were watching him. And as he's doing this, it's like, oh my God, this is just so weird. And it's like, is he involved?
Detectives asked John to come down to the precinct to talk.
He explained to me about this weird and unusual arrangement that he had with Monica. The envelopes that we found in the home would be labeled like electric bill, water bill, mortgage, whatever, but they were used to give back to John so that John could then pay her bills. So we're looking at this from the outside, wondering what the hell's going on, that he's paying her in cash. She is now taking cash, putting it in envelopes, giving it back to John. John's then writing a check to pay her electric bill. So it was fueling that frustration and animosity in John's perspective. He's still doing everything for Monica, even though they're not married anymore. Because being a devout Catholic, Monica didn't care they were divorced. In her mind, they were still married, and they were going to be married until death do they part.
John admits that the situation bothered him, but he says he'd never resort to murder.
He agreed. It's very frustrating. It was very much a pain for him to do all this stuff, but he couldn't get rid of her, is for lack of a better phrase.
Anxious to prove his innocence, John provides police with an alibi.
He was able to provide us with a detailed explanation as to what he had done that day, where he was, and who he was with.
John tells the detectives he was meeting with an acquaintance named Sarah Powell before the two of them joined up with a larger group at a local restaurant.
And I asked him if he has information that can verify his alibi, and he was able to provide me with a cell phone number for Sarah Powell. We wrapped up the interviews. We advised John Schmeier to stay away from the home. We may need to go back there at some point in time just to stay out of it. We had a secure scene.
The next day, Detectives speak with Sarah Powell to confirm John's alibi.
She revealed to me that, yes, I was with John Schmeier yesterday. She had been with him for lunch at a restaurant where they were discussing online trading, that John experimented with that, and he enjoyed doing it, and she was looking to get involved in it to try to make some extra money.
Sarah and her fiance knew John Schmeier from a group that met frequently at a local restaurant.
John had started meeting with a group of people at Hooters restaurant, sometimes a few times a month. They jokingly referred to themselves as the Orange Shorts Society, or OSS.
It was a place where they would go and just hang out and, drink beer and eat wings.
After their meeting, John and Sarah had met up with the larger OSS group.
When I asked her who all was there, she was able to provide information that matched John's as far as who all was present that day.
Investigators tracked down the rest of the OSS members at the meeting, and each one of them echoes John and Sarah's story. But they also share something else about John's relationship with Monica.
At these OSS meetings, John would say that he was frustrated with her and he was trying to move on with his life, but yet Monica was always there in his business.
Even though his alibi is confirmed, John appears to have a clear motive for murder, which makes him suspicious to police. So they ask him to take a lie detector test.
John submitted to a polygraph examination. John's polygraph was inconclusive, which means that we were unable to determine whether he was being truthful or not.
The test results have police mulling over a new theory.
Well, if John has an alibi, well, then maybe there's something else going on here that we need to look into. Theoretically, what if he paid somebody to kill her? We started really looking at John as far as, a murder for hire, that theory.
There was money involved, and certainly divorces can be acrimonious. He certainly was somebody they continued to look at.
Detective suspicions about John are stoked yet again when they get a troubling call from Monica's brother, Eric.
I told them that John comes to the door at about 5, 6 o'clock in the morning. And then John went into explaining that he went to Monica's house. John was not supposed to go to the house. He was told not to go there. He went there anyway.
Now that set a bell off for us. What the hell's going on?
Detectives are eyeing John Schmeier in the murder case of his wife, Monica, after learning that he returned to the crime scene just hours after being questioned by police.
We learned from Eric, Monica's brother, that John Schmeier disregarded what we had asked him and actually went to the scene to see what had happened and gone into the house, had looked around, had walked around.
John's behavior is not only suspicious, but could have damaged the investigation.
Anything further that we wanted to do there had been jeopardized because the scene was no longer secure at that point. With John not following our request, it's another arrow in our quiver as far as, the person of interest, just another little check mark.
The day after the murder, police canvassed the neighborhood around Monica's home.
Patrol officers went out and spoke with neighbors, were able to locate people that saw something suspicious that was out of the ordinary the afternoon of March 31st. The first witness Patrol located was Mr. Kegerice. He lives up the hill from Monica Schmeier. Mr. Kegerice advised that the afternoon of March 31st, he noticed a gentleman coming down the hill. And he said it was kind of unusual. He'd never seen the guy before that afternoon. He sees this same gentleman now walking with a purpose, is how he describes it, back up the hill with what he believes to be a white envelope in his hand. So now we're putting 2 to 2 together. Oh, white envelope. We had white envelopes in the house. Those white envelopes contained cash. Why is this guy in the middle of nowhere, then comes back, and now he has an envelope, and he's walking with a purpose? Patrol also located a second witness, Mr. Crawford, who lived a little further up the hill. And Mr. Crawford was able to tell us that he was coming up the road from the Schmeier residence, and he noticed a gentleman walking up the roadway, which was unusual because there's not a lot of foot traffic out where these guys live. And Mr. Crawford also said you can see up the hill a silver van. And he describes it as a work van. It's not a soccer mom van, it's just your regular panel work van. Patrol was able to locate some tire tracks in the grass where that van, you could see where it did like a 3-point turn, turned around and went back up the hill. So now we have a direction of travel.
Investigators conclude the van headed towards a village called Jefferson.
In Jefferson, there's a bank. Now that bank has a camera that's facing out. So what we figured was, well, we'll get a search warrant, we'll grab the bank video, as well as an ATM for March 31st. If the suspect had made a left, he goes towards Jefferson. If he makes a right, he goes to Maryland. We have a 50-50 shot, whether or not we got this van.
Investigators keep their fingers crossed as they comb through the poor quality video.
And I looked through all this video looking for silver vans, and I was able to find numerous silver vans that were coming through and going back on that day. We were looking for a needle in a haystack. We had a van. We now had, a possible suspect. We had the white envelopes. We had, all this information, but yet we still were getting nowhere.
3 days after the murder, investigators get the autopsy report, which they hope can help shed some light on the circumstances of Monica's death.
Miss Schmeier had been murdered with a single gunshot wound to the head right above her eye. What also was found was she had a lot of trauma to the right side of her face and her cheek and lips area, indicating that there had been a struggle.
I told them that Monica would fight. Monica had no fear. She had no fear of death. Monica did not care. She would go after the guy and scratched him. When I told the police that, they checked for DNA under her fingernails.
The fingernail scrapings, we sent them off to the forensic lab for analysis for DNA.
While they wait for the results, detectives focus on anyone Monica would have trusted to come to the house.
We had information from Eric, Monica's brother, that Monica had a handyman that would take care of things for her.
He lived a pretty good distance from her house. He would come down and did a lot of work for her. He trimmed trees and stuff. He did come often, and he didn't charge her for anything. That did seem suspicious to us at the time, and we kind of thought there might have been a relationship there.
Now, this handyman was married, but yet he spent a lot of time with Monica. As an investigator, you look at who normally kills you. It's someone you know, someone you have a relationship with. There's a thin line between love and hate, and that's where, our suspicions were, okay, well then maybe there's something else going on here that we need to look into.
Detectives investigating the homicide of 55-year-old Monica Schmeier have learned that Monica may have had a relationship with a handyman who did work for her around the house.
He would cut her grass, would do odd jobs around the house, take care of things for her, and she would often be seen like having lunch with him, or there was a relationship there. Now, we didn't know how strong that relationship or how intimate that relationship was.
Monica's brother, Eric, can offer investigators little insight into his sister's recent personal life.
In the beginning, we visited often, and then John left. Even though she was my next-door neighbor, she became isolated from me. And In a way, I didn't know what was going on.
Detectives asked the handyman to come down to the station for an interview.
When we asked him where he was at the time of the murder, he told the investigator that he had been working at a residence within a gated community in Adams County, about 40 miles away.
Unwilling to take him at his word, detectives check into his alibi.
We were able to substantiate that based off of the gate log as well as the video that was there that showed him coming in early in the morning and leaving after the 911 call would have been placed. So we were able to eliminate him as a possible person of interest in this investigation.
With the handyman in the clear, detectives are running out of possible suspects.
We looked at everyone. We looked at the UPS driver who delivered a package that day. We looked at the mailman. We looked at the exterminator. We looked at people that she knew from the dry cleaners. Anywhere we could find information about Mrs. Schmeier, we talked to those people because we were at wit's end as far as who could have done this and why would they have done it.
The passing weeks start to take an emotional toll on Monica's friends and family.
Everybody back home is waiting for something to happen, something. And then I got to the point, and I think the rest of the family, it's just gonna be one of those things. You know, we're just gonna, the guy maybe gets away with it or whatever.
Just seemed as if they were never going to solve it. And I think people were concerned, what if it was random? Because if it was random, it can happen again.
A month into the investigation, Detective Damagon decides to take a fresh look at all the evidence they have so far.
I was sitting at my desk in my office, and I have my notepad, and I'm going through all my notes from the scene.
The investigators circle back to Monica's ex, John, and his friends at the Orange Short Society.
I'm flipping through my notebook, and I get to my interview with Sarah Powell. Reading that, going back through that.
Fellow Orange Short Society member Sarah Powell had confirmed John's alibi. But now another detail suddenly jumps out to the detective.
And immediately, a light bulb goes off, and I recall, Sarah Powell telling me, my fiance is usually there, but he wasn't yesterday.
Sarah's fiance, Timothy Jacoby, is also a member of the Orange Short Society. But because he was unable to confirm John's alibi on the day of the murder, he had been off investigators' radar until now.
Come to find out, he has a master's degree, he's college educated, he's a U.S. Air Force veteran. He made, better than average money.
But when police search Timothy's name in their database, they make an alarming discovery.
He had a prior arrest for a robbery of a jewelry store involving a firearm.
Scooped up, I think it was close to $48,000 worth of jewelry. Turned around and ran out and dropped all the loot as he was running. They still caught him. He served prison time for that.
An ex-con who's friends with John Schmeier. The discovery reignites detectives' murder-for-hire theory.
We're lacking the nexus between Tim and Monica, and that's where the investigation kind of pivots to John Schmeier again.
Clearly he didn't do it himself, but he could have paid someone to do it.
Detective suspicions intensify when they check John's phone records.
In John's cell phone records, we found a phone call the day of the murder from John to Tim Jacoby. And I'm like, oh my God. It was like an aha moment for me. So all this is beginning to fit together. We had information from Eric, Monica's brother, that Monica had stated at some point in time that if anything ever happens to me, John did it. So we were looking, did John Schmeier and Tim Jacoby conspire to kill Monica Schmeier?
When police discover that John Schmeier's friend, Timothy Jacoby, is a convicted felon, they wonder if Schmeier may have commissioned him to murder his wife, Monica.
I run him for firearms, and what does he own? A Kel-Tec 32 automatic, which is one of the manufacturers we're looking for. So again, another flag goes up. You know, now we got to tie him to a van.
Was Jacoby the man witnesses saw driving the silver van close to Monica's house around the time of the murder?
But the problem we're seeing now is he doesn't own a van. We then identified where he worked, and he has access to a silver work van that they sign out on a calendar. You just go in and you check the calendar. If it's available, you put your initials in there, and on Tuesday you get the van.
Investigators asked for the company's logbook to see if Timothy had the van when Monica was killed.
We're going through it, and wouldn't you know it, there's only 11 months there. And the 1 month is missing is March. March 31st is the date of the murder. Once we found that Tim Jacoby had access to a van, we checked that bank surveillance video, and we were able to locate a van that's the same make, model as the one that Tim Jacoby had access to, coming out a route that would lead someone towards Tim's home.
The evidence piling up against Jacoby is compelling, but detectives will need something more concrete if they're to file charges.
We make the decision, we're gonna hit Tim's house with a search warrant. Tim did not say one word. Not, why are you guys here? What's going on? Nothing. Silence, other than a smirk on his face.
The search quickly uncovers damning evidence.
We found a firearm that had been stolen in a burglary in Florida some years before. So Tim, being a felon, he was not to possess any kind of firearm, and he was currently on parole, so we charged him with possession of a firearm as well as receiving stolen property. His parole was violated, and he was put in jail.
In addition to the stolen gun, investigators find a strange piece of evidence that leaves them scratching their heads.
In a detached shed that was on the property, we found a small barrel about, I don't know, that long, maybe 2.5 inches long. And it appeared to me that it was consistent with a 32 or a small caliber firearm barrel.
Could this barrel be part of the murder weapon? While it's sent to the lab for analysis, detectives have some questions for Jacoby. But Jacoby isn't interested in talking.
Tim invoked his right to counsel, advised that he didn't have anything to say, and that he wanted his attorney present.
While Jacoby stonewalls, detectives question his fiancée.
When we interviewed Sarah, Sarah denied any involvement to the point where she was physically upset. I then further inquired with Sarah if she'd ever seen this small black firearm that would fit in like the palm of my hand, a 32 ACP firearm to match the shell casing we found at the scene. And she said yes, that she had been with Tim when he had shot it. And she advised that it was at Tim's parents' place on a covered porch that's behind their farm, and they would shoot up towards a field.
Police quickly file a search warrant and begin scouring Tim's parents' property, starting with the house.
We found the box for a 32 ACP firearm, but we didn't find the gun. I went out back, looking in the grass, trying to find, a shell casing, something that's gonna help us. We didn't find anything.
To connect Tim to Monica's murder, detectives need to find the gun or the shell casings that match the ones found at the crime scene.
At that point, I'm standing on the decking of this porch, and I look down. The boards are spaced in a way that they're, I don't know, maybe a ½ inch to 3/4 of an inch apart. You know, a light bulb goes off. I look at these two guys and said, did anybody go underneath? And they said, I don't think so. And I'll never forget, I'm standing there. They weren't underneath the platform for, I don't know, 30 seconds. And the one officer says, are you looking for a 32? And I said, man, don't screw with me like that. And he goes, here you go. And he holds one out from underneath the porch. He goes, oh, here's another one. Here's another one. Here's another one. The shell casings we found at the Jacoby farm were matched up with the shell casing from the murder scene. The gun that fired the shot that killed Monica Schmeier is the same gun that fired those rounds that we found at the farm.
But before detectives could bring murder charges against him, one question was crucial to their case. Why would Tim Jacoby kill Monica Schmeier?
Police determined that he had never met Monica, had nothing against Monica, and the only way he knew her was through her husband.
To detectives, it was looking more and more like Tim didn't act alone.
John's alibi was airtight in the sense that he could not have physically committed that crime. However, that didn't clear him with police, because certainly he could have hired Tim Jacoby.
Anxious to get the truth once and for all, detectives confront the man they've suspected all along.
I went down to Virginia, where Dr. Schmeier was now residing, because we were not 100% sure that John didn't have anything to do with the homicide.
Police have strong evidence implicating Tim Jacoby in the murder of Monica Schmeier. But they suspect that Monica's ex-husband, John, may have ordered the hit.
We've identified Tim Jacoby as a suspect, but now we need a motive. Well, how does Tim Jacoby know Monica Schmeier? Because he doesn't know her, but he knows John. Did John Schmeier and Tim Jacoby conspire to kill Monica Schmeier?
John and Tim would socialize together. According to John, that's where Tim learned about Monica and the envelopes of money.
When we questioned him further, he said Tim knew that Monica would have cash at the house because that's what John told everyone. He knew that Monica lived by herself because that's what John told everyone. Tim Jacoby took that information and he devised in his mind the perfect crime.
It's a plausible motive. Still, to test the theory that John may have paid Tim to carry out the murder, detectives searched the financial records of both men.
We're trying to find any kind of financial connection between John and Tim. We left no stone unturned. We were finding nothing.
Yet detectives know that John had placed a call to Jacoby on the day of the murder.
When we inquired with John about why this phone call had been made, he related that, well, he had called Tim to let him know that he was meeting with Sarah because he didn't want Tim to think there was some kind of relationship between them or that John was trying to formulate a relationship with Sarah.
Without any evidence to implicate John in his wife's murder, detectives finally clear him as a suspect.
I believe that John, as quirky as he may be, had nothing to do with the homicide of Monica Schmeier. No one other than Tim Jacoby committed this crime.
On October 9th, 2012, Timothy Jacoby is charged with first-degree murder.
Someone she had never met that John knew. The whole thing was just surreal.
2 years later, the case goes to trial, and prosecutors lay out how they believe Monica's murder unfolded.
We believed that afternoon Tim signed out the van in Lancaster County. He came across, parked the van, walked up to the home. Whether he knocked on the door or he rushed the house, whatever, he overtook Monica, whether it was by surprise or by force. At some point, she made a run for the phone, at which point she brought the phone up to make the call, and she was shot.
Worried police are on their way, Jacoby panics.
Tim, in haste, grabs what he sees on the counter, walking with a purpose, with an envelope in his hand, and leaves.
Jacoby tries to cover his tracks by tampering with the logbook and murder weapon.
It showed that Jacoby was trying to erase every bit of evidence that might tie him to this crime.
So far, the evidence is circumstantial. So prosecutors turn to the results of a specialist YSTR DNA test.
A YSTR tests for specifically the male Y chromosome. They ran the YSTR test on the fingernail scrapings of Monica Schmeier, and they found a complete Y profile of the male Jacoby lineage. We eliminated his brothers and his father as having anything to do with it based off of alibis, other circumstantial evidence.
On October 8th, 2014, the jury finds Jacoby guilty of first-degree murder, burglary, tampering with physical evidence, and robbery.
Ultimately, Tim was sentenced to death. That's justice in my eyes.
Maybe there was a sense of relief and closure with the family, but for me, that pales in the fact that my sister's dead. I want people to remember Monica as a dedicated Catholic, someone who was dedicated to her family. I don't know anybody that was more dedicated to her family and to God. She was unbelievable.
Beloved father and devoted basketball coach.
Jimmy loved kids.
He loved to talk about coaching basketball and God.
Ruthlessly gunned down in his own home.
There were 10 shell casings. Whoever did this wanted to make sure that he was dead.
Leaving a whole community devastated.
I just started screaming. I literally just lost it.
Detectives follow evidence down a twisted trail.
It was what we call a whodunit. All the doors were locked to some fashion.
There was muddy footprints coming into the foyer area.
To uncover a number of suspects.
He immediately lawyered up. He didn't want to talk about anything.
He had just filed for divorce before he was killed.
Was there some sort of romantic thing gone awry?
And unveil a killer no one could have ever imagined.
They had no remorse, no confessions.
You saying that you killed him?
It shocked me very, very much. This could happen to anybody.
Cordova is a peaceful suburb just east of Memphis, Tennessee. Its wide open spaces and strong church communities make it a haven for families.
Cordova is one of those very safe neighborhoods. Kids riding up and down to the bikes. You honk at your neighbor and your neighbor waves.
It's not a place that we're accustomed to seeing violent crimes.
But in the winter of 2013, the town's carefree spirit is disrupted by a troubled call to police.
The initial call came on a Friday morning from the principal at Ridgeway High School.
Jimmy McLean had not reported to work. He was a school teacher and a basketball coach.
Jimmy was always punctual, so when he didn't show up for work, people immediately started worrying about Jimmy.
our patrol officers go over there, and they knocked on the door. Nothing. The front door was locked, the back door was locked, the garage door was shut, all the windows were locked. Nothing appeared to be opened or broke. And then one officer was able to look in through some glass doors. And then he saw something that looked like a shell casing.
Immediately on alert, officers quickly force entry into the home.
As soon as they made entry, they saw a black male on the floor with a lot of blood around him, dead.
Homicide investigators are on the scene within minutes.
When I first arrived, we see a male victim laying in the den area of the house who appeared to have been shot multiple times.
Whoever did this wanted to make sure that he was dead.
Detectives find a wallet in the victim's pocket. The ID inside confirms this is 49-year-old Jimmy McClain.
The big thing that stood out at that time was the numerous shell casings that were scattered throughout the living portion of the residence.
There were 10 shell casings, and they were all the same caliber, 40 caliber, but they were two different brands. That puts a theory in your head. Was there two shooters, you know, one brand in one gun, one brand in the other, or was it just one shooter with mixed rounds?
Detectives can find no murder weapon at the scene, but something else grabs their attention.
There was muddy footprints coming into the foyer area, which we knew were not any of our officers' prints.
We were able to lift those prints.
I truly was hoping we could identify the type of shoe and the actual size of the shoe.
There were no signs of fingerprints to the naked eye, so we were able to swab the doorknobs, both interior and exterior on the front door, for the presence of DNA.
An exhaustive search of the house yields no sign of forced entry.
We had no signs of robbery, no signs of burglary. The big thing to me was all the doors were locked to some fashion, meaning someone locked the door on their way out upon leaving the scene. That told me that most likely our suspect had a key to the residence.
So once we realized that somebody had let themselves in, we were like, well, who's got access to these keys? Did Jimmy know the person who did this?
Detectives also attempt to discover the approximate time the murder happened.
We were able to find out there was a shots fired call that came in our dispatch around 8:50 p.m. 2 days before we found the body.
So started making sense real quick, though, that that's probably when this happened.
As police continue their investigation at the scene, Jimmy's sister, Easter, arrives.
To this day, that is the absolute worst day of my life. It's the day I came around the corner and saw yellow tape around my baby brother's house, who I love so dearly. The police asked me, "Ma'am, do you know who lives here?" I said, "My brother is my brother. Where's my brother?"
Officers confirm Easter's worst fears and tell her that her brother has been killed.
I just started screaming, just started just howling.
Detectives ask Easter and Jimmy's mother, Jamela, to come downtown. Through her tears, Easter tells detectives how young Jimmy grew up to be such a beloved figure.
We grew up in eastern Arkansas. Jimmy is the fourth of 8 kids. He was intelligent, precocious, very athletic.
From a young age, Jimmy McClain had a passion for basketball.
Jimmy walked tall, slender, like a greyhound. It's real tight muscle, flexible, agile.
His nickname was Full Time because he never played half speed. He always played full speed, and that's how he took life.
Jimmy had played basketball with Scottie Pippen. Jimmy considered Scottie Pippen a friend, and I think it was likewise.
After 7 years of professional basketball, Jimmy took up coaching.
Jimmy loved teaching and mentoring. He just was a natural leader with youth.
Jimmy had found his calling, but one part of his life remained unfulfilled.
The thing that he talked to me the most about was his desire to be married.
In the late 1990s, Jimmy met the partner he'd always dreamed of. Her name was Carla.
He was very happy, very excited. He took his relationship very seriously. The next summer, they got married.
Jimmy also became a father to Carla's 2 children from a previous relationship, 16-year-old Tiffany and 11-year-old Dwayne.
He never had children, so he was looking forward to being a father. They all looked up to him as a mentor and as a father, and he spent a lot of time trying to be sure that they were on a good path. He talked to me a lot about the things he was going to do with Dwayne and Tiffany, and he especially wanted to involve Dwayne in summer basketball camps and so forth. He was very serious about being a good husband and a good father.
Together with Carla, Jimmy raised Dwayne and Tiffany as his own. But after 8 years of marriage, cracks started to show in their relationship.
Carla wanted the divorce at first. I do believe that the problems were related to something that occurred early on in their relationship.
Initially, Jimmy had resisted the idea.
I overheard Jimmy telling her that it doesn't make sense for us to be separated. There's nothing wrong, we're not having problems.
But eventually, Carla and Jimmy split up, and after 4 years of separation, Jimmy finally agreed to make it official.
I don't think I really got the full story about exactly what changed his mind and his heart toward her. But he had just filed for divorce a couple of weeks before he was killed.
Detectives are suspicious. Was the timing just a coincidence, or did Jimmy's looming divorce have something to do with his murder?
We immediately thought we needed to talk to Carla.
Had Jimmy and Carla been in some sort of argument or confrontation?
Coming up, detectives unearth disturbing clues.
There had been a scandal at the high school.
Why are these numbers erased during the same time period as the homicide?
And the truth blindsides everyone.
We had found the needle in the haystack.
They had admitted to killing a basketball coach.
Police have just learned that Jimmy McClain filed for divorce 2 weeks before he was killed. And now detectives need to know if animosity between Jimmy and his soon-to-be ex-wife Carla could have been a motive for murder.
We had asked, Carla and Tiffany and Dwayne, her biological children, to come town.
Dwayne and Tiffany wait in the next room while police talk to Carla, starting with her relationship with Jimmy.
She says, look, we were going through a divorce, but it wasn't because he was doing anything bad. She said that we fell out of love.
Carla tells police that when she and Jimmy were married in 2001, Jimmy treated her kids, Dwayne and Tiffany, like they were his own. But as they grew into their late teens, Carla and Jimmy's parenting styles started to clash.
Carla did advise that Jimmy was really hard on her kids. Jimmy was very discipline-oriented, and she always took the side of the kids. In her eyes, they could do nothing wrong. She wasn't going to let Jimmy over-discipline. And some of the issues is what transformed into this growing away from each other.
Detectives ask Carla directly if she stands to gain from Jimmy's death.
She did advise that she had a life insurance policy through her work where Jimmy was on the policy and she would have been the beneficiary.
Was the life insurance payout a motive for Carla to kill Jimmy? Knowing evidence from the crime scene suggests the killer let themselves in. Detectives need to find out if Carla still had access to Jimmy's home.
We actually did ask Carla if she had a key to the house, and she did not have a key that she could remember.
Undeterred, they ask where Carla was on the night of the murder.
She didn't go out and do anything. She said it was raining that night. It was nasty weather. She actually went to her bedroom and read a book. We asked if anybody could verify that. She said, well, my son, Dwayne, because he was at home as well.
To confirm Carla's alibi, police bring in Dwayne and Tiffany, who are waiting in the next room.
When we saw Dwayne, he's a 19-year-old, kid. Dwayne gave a statement advising to us that, when his mom came home, that he just sat and chilled at the house. He didn't have a cell phone, so he would use his mom's. His mom said that she was down in his bedroom. He said he was up in his bedroom, and they didn't see each other the rest of the night.
Dwayne's account lines up with Carla's, but detectives are curious about whether Dwayne had any conflicts with Jimmy.
Tell me about Jimmy. How was y'all's relationship?
It was cool, but we bumped heads a little bit sometimes. He was straight up in the night. He was cool. He fun, loving person.
Dwayne just was like, I can't believe this happened. I don't know who would have done this.
Police turn their attention to his sister Tiffany, and right away sense some tension.
When we interviewed Tiffany, she admitted her and Jimmy butted heads on things, and she actually moved out. She didn't like being parented by him.
Detectives ask where she was at the time of the murder.
Advised she was at home with her boyfriend during the time frame all that Wednesday evening. So at the time we got through interviewing Carla, Tiffany, and Dwayne, there was not anything to lead us to believe that they had any involvement with the death of Jimmy.
To help confirm their alibis, detectives ask for Carla and Tiffany's cell phones.
We were going to use the technology of the cell phone pinging to corroborate where they were the night of the murder.
While they wait for those results, detectives canvass Jimmy's friends and colleagues to find out who else might have had a key to his house.
Early on in the investigation, we had to look at everything. With Jimmy being a high school teacher, with Jimmy being a basketball coach, there was multiple people that could have done this.
We had to start going back to who knew Jimmy. And the first thing we did was work. We spoke with all the teachers. All the teachers liked Jimmy. Other coaches liked Jimmy. The principal liked Jimmy.
Detectives can find no one with a key or even a bad word to say about Jimmy.
He was the kindest, gentlest, most compassionate person that I know. But for somebody to snatch your loved one from you out of their own selfish reasons, it really is heartbreaking, and it makes you mad.
3 days into the investigation, detectives receive Jimmy's cell phone back from forensics and discover that he was texting shortly before he was killed.
He was texting with a female subject, and they were back and forth talking about some directions and basically good night. The last text we identified as a subject named Pam Smith.
The name is new to police, but when they compare the time of her last text with the report of gunshots on the night of the murder, they realize they were just minutes apart. With this new lead, Pam Smith becomes detectives' newest suspect. Who is she, and was she involved in Jimmy's murder?
When you read the text messages between her and Jimmy, the lingering question had to be, was there some sort of, romantic thing gone awry?
Detectives have just discovered that Jimmy McLean was texting with a woman named Pam Smith on the night he was murdered.
We were able to determine that Pam was the last person that Jimmy had contacted.
Investigators need to speak to Pam to see if she has any information that points to the killer.
We called just to say, this is the sheriff's office. Do you know Jimmy? And she was like, yeah, that's my boyfriend.
Detectives inform Pam of Jimmy's murder and carefully gauge her response.
She was extremely distraught. She was like, do I need to come down there? What do I need to do? We still had to figure out who she was. Is she married? Is there an affair situation? Is this a boyfriend, girlfriend situation?
Pam tells detectives that she and Jimmy had only been dating for 6 months.
We were able to sort of dig into the relationship between Pam and Jimmy, what seemed like a healthy relationship.
Pamela claims she was 3 hours away in Nashville at the time of the murder, and she's more than happy to turn over her phone so police can verify her statement.
After talking to her, I mean, there was nothing that she gave any kind of suspicion or anything.
Detectives have one more question for Pamela.
We actually did ask Pam if she had a key to the house, and she advised that she did not have a key.
But she says she knows who does.
Pam had overheard a phone call. Jimmy was telling his wife, Carla, that she could come by the house while he was gone to pick up some mail that had come to the house for her. Pam took note that when they left the house, Jimmy didn't leave the mail in the mailbox or on the front door, but he left it inside the house, which told Pam that Carla had a key to the house.
Police believe the killer had a key, but Carla told detectives she didn't have one. The discrepancy raises a red flag.
Is it possible that Carla had a key to the house? How can we prove that she didn't come into the house the night of the murder?
There's only one way to know for sure.
We used the technology of the cell phone pinging to follow her from her work all the way to home.
The cell phone data indicates Carla was home all night, and her daughter Tiffany was too.
Everybody's statements made sense where they were. There was no reason to pursue any other questions with them or Pam at that moment.
Before Carla and Tiffany can be completely ruled out, police must corroborate the calls and texts on their phones with the complete records from the cell companies.
And those can take several days, depending on the circumstance.
A week after the murder, Jimmy's loved ones pay their respects at his funeral.
Jimmy's funeral was held at a local Church of Christ, probably a couple thousand people there. Jimmy touched a lot of people.
Going to Jimmy's funeral was a tough process for myself. So many people loved him.
The mystery of who could have killed Jimmy is on everyone's mind, and grief-stricken loved ones are desperate for answers.
The family was very concerned, but I felt that absolutely the truth would come out.
It was hard waiting and hoping that they get that person before it's too late.
It's very frustrating. After several days, it gets worse. It gets harder to solve, and the family starts to lose hope in you.
The day after the funeral, detectives received the forensics reports.
There was no extra DNA under the fingernails of him to see if he got physically close enough to maybe grab the suspect or anything like that. We didn't get any fingerprints that weren't supposed to be there. Jimmy's prints were the only ones there.
The report isn't all bad news for detectives.
An expert at Nike was able to determine the muddy shoe prints in the entryway of the house most likely came from a Nike Air Force One.
These are basketball-type shoes. They're between the size 10 and 11.
Before detectives can follow up on this new lead, their investigation takes a bizarre twist.
There had been a scandal at the high school.
Ridgeway High School had a very good basketball team. They were one of the top in the state. We started hearing about a student at the school who had just recently gotten in some trouble.
Detectives need to know if the scandal is linked to Jimmy's murder. Staff tells them the player at the center of the storm is number 22, Mackenzie Sewell.
Obviously, he was a fairly good basketball player, but he was also 2 years older than people that he was playing with. He was actually an adult, falsified documents to still play high school basketball because he was attempting to try to get a scholarship to play.
A week after Jimmy is found dead, the scandal explodes into the headlines.
This man used a fake transcript to enroll here at Ridgeway High, and our sources tell us the man has a GED, but enrolled here simply so he could play basketball.
A humiliated Mackenzie is kicked off the team and out of Ridgeway High.
The dream of the NBA is over. The coaches were like, oh my goodness, because the whole school gets punished for it. They get disqualified from being able to play.
The scandal raises a key question for detectives. Had Jimmy discovered the truth about Mackenzie and been silenced before he could report him to authorities?
Did Jimmy initiate this whole situation? Because we knew Jimmy was an ethical individual. If Mackenzie thought Jimmy had anything to do with this, then this could be a reason why Jimmy was murdered.
Police are eager to talk to Mackenzie, but that's not going to happen.
He immediately lawyered up. He didn't want to talk about anything.
Detectives try a different approach. They go to speak with the person who registered him at Ridgeway High, his mother, Chandra Nicole. What she tells them is more bizarre than they could have imagined.
What we found out is that was his wife.
Detectives hunting the killer of high school basketball coach Jimmy McClain are investigating whether a scandal involving one of his players is linked to his death. Now they discovered that the player's mother is actually his wife. She admits to helping Mackenzie falsify his age, but says it wasn't Jimmy who had discovered the deception.
She had actually called in to say that he was falsifying records, that he wasn't supposed to be in the school because they had gotten into an argument.
While enjoying his second go-around in high school, Mackenzie began a relationship with a fellow student. When his wife caught wind of it, she told the school about Mackenzie's scam.
It was a domestic situation between him and the wife. Really didn't have anything to do with Jimmy. Didn't follow Jimmy at all.
Once again, a promising lead evaporates into thin air, and over a week into the investigation, police are starting over.
I was back to square one again. I was starting to question myself and wonder, are we gonna get anywhere with this thing?
I was starting to be concerned. I wanted to know when people were gonna be charged.
Just as investigators begin to fear the trail growing cold, they receive the complete cell phone records for Jimmy's ex-wife, Carla, and her daughter, Tiffany.
We had ordered direct cell phone records to corroborate the exact records that we had initially dumped. You're talking hundreds, even thousands of records at times to look through, to see if you can find where there's a discrepancy in something.
After days of hard work, police get the break they've been praying for.
Everybody else's phones were making sense, but Carla's phone did not make sense. We noticed there were actually people being texted between 6 and 9, 2 different phone numbers. And that was the time frame of the homicide. Those texts were conveniently erased off Carla's phone. So that automatically piqued interest. So we were trying to identify the 2 phone numbers that were deleted. We identified one of them as a subject named Robert, and then another subject named Heather. We looked up Robert real quick and found out Robert was a convicted felon for dope dealing. But why are these numbers erased the night of the murder? At that point, I felt it necessary to call Carla back in and talk to her again, and then further identify maybe Heather and Robert since we had names on them.
When detectives press Carla about the texts, she tells them they belong to her son and Jimmy's former stepson, Dwayne. Detectives already know that Dwayne uses his mom's phone since he doesn't own one of his own.
Carla said that Heather was a girlfriend. She says, oh, she's a good girl. She's a girl that lives out in Cordova, not too far. Carla said wasn't too fond of Robert, but she did admit he and Dwayne were friends. She says, well, I don't really like him hanging out with Robert too much. You know, he's a troublemaker.
Knowing that Dwayne was texting with a known felon during the time frame of Jimmy's murder is a red flag for detectives. So they asked Dwayne to join his mom down at the station.
The way we approached Dwayne was like, hey, we're having to kind of start over and get a more detailed events of the night. And he advised when his mom got home, he had the phone, he spoke with one of his friends, and then Heather came over.
When detectives finish with Carla and Dwayne, they quickly contact Heather to see if she can confirm Dwayne's story.
She said, I went to Dwayne's house that evening, later that evening, so she has confirmed that she went over there.
It seems like it's another dead end. Yet, when detectives follow up with a question about the basketball shoe print found at the crime scene, the interview takes a promising turn.
We asked about the shoes, and she said, oh, Dwayne has these Air Force Ones, and he wears a size 10.5, which fit the crime scene. And at that point, she said, and I remember seeing those Air Force Ones out on the porch, but I hadn't seen them since then. She said, I even have a picture of them. And when she showed a picture, it was a picture of Dwayne staying in the kitchen with a AR-15 rifle and these Air Force Ones.
Police quickly get a search warrant for Carla's home.
Searching the closets and everything else, so there's no Air Force Ones in there. There's no shoes that match the homicide. Took pictures of his room, and we left. We didn't come out at that house with anything.
So far, linking Dwayne to the crime has not proven fruitful. But detectives have another strategy.
We know for a fact that there was text messages between Robert and Dwayne during the homicide. We feel that those texts could be very important. Since he'd erased them off his phone, we couldn't get them. So my goal was to get a search warrant for Robert's phone, hoping that the text messages were still on his phone, visible where we could see them.
While police wait for a warrant to be approved, officers keep an eye on Robert.
I arrived, and within a few hours of setting up surveillance, Robert Collins came out of his house.
At that point, our detectives went to talk to him, and Robert took off running.
Detectives investigating the murder of Jimmy McClain believe text on the phone of convicted felon Robert Collins may point to the killer.
When Robert took off running, he ran a good ways, but we needed to catch him. We didn't want him to destroy his phone or anything like that.
As Robert Collins was running away from the scene, he tossed something.
Our detectives ended up catching him on foot, and when they did, he had a large amount of narcotics.
The illegal drugs give detectives reason to arrest Robert. But even more incriminating is what he tried to discard as he fled.
When we saw that he had tossed a weapon, we immediately thought maybe that was the weapon that was involved.
So in the back of my head, I'm thinking, oh, this is fantastic. Are we going to solve the homicide right now? You get excited, like, hey, we're there, we're going to get this.
Police bring Robert down to the station, but before they question him, they carefully examine his gun and phone.
I think it was very quickly determined it wasn't the weapon from the scene.
Still, detectives have plenty of leverage on Robert.
He's a felon convicted with a handgun. Now he's got another handgun on him and a large amount of drugs. This could easily go federal. maybe that could help us out. Maybe he'd want to work something out. He wouldn't budge on anything. I don't want to talk to y'all. Basically, he said, just put me in a jail cell. I'll go do my time. You just don't get that. That's just not normal.
Is Robert trying to protect his buddy, Dwayne, or just himself? If he won't give anything up, detectives hope his cell phone might.
I was hoping that the text messages were still on his phone. Started going through it. Well, Robert had erased his text too. But what Robert didn't erase were some pictures that we were able to get. The day before the homicide, Robert on his phone had a picture of a handgun. It is a similar gun, a .40 caliber Smith & Wesson Sigma, the same caliber used. What was unique about the handgun was not the handgun itself, but where the handgun was laying. And it was laying on a very unique bedspread. When I saw the bedspread, I was like, I've seen that bedspread before. So go get the search warrant pictures from when we picked Dwayne up. Well, as we scrolled through more pictures, we finally found a deleted picture that had Dwayne in front of the bedspread. So it tied it all in with the gun in the picture.
Police now know the gun likely belonged to Dwayne or someone in his inner circle. But who used it to gun Jimmy down in cold blood? Detectives hope to find out from Robert himself.
So when we put Robert in jail, we were hoping Robert would say something on the phone. The first phone call that Robert made was to a young guy. First thing that Robert said to the guy was, "Hey man, that pit bull, it's real sick." And the guy kind of like, I don't think he caught what he was saying. He's like, "Oh yeah," just laughing, I got you. And Robert, you could see, was very fresh. Like, "No man, I'm not kidding. You need to get rid of that pit bull, it's sick. Bri shouldn't have sold it to you." We did have indication that pit bull was most likely the gun.
And real sick, put it in street terms, means it has a body on it.
Detectives trace the owner of the phone Robert called.
It was a kid named Jamarius that lived in the Cordova area.
We believe that Jamarius Cooper had in his possession the firearm that was used in the killing of Jimmy McClain.
Police get an emergency search warrant and race over to Jamarius' home before he can dispose of the gun.
When we got Jamarius Cooper's bedroom, we systematically started going through places that things could be hidden.
We were going through it and we weren't finding anything. And then one of my detectives, probably into the 30th box or so, he's like, "I got something." And I was like, "Do what?"
When I saw that gun, I immediately felt like we had found the needle in the haystack. We had known through this investigation that most likely we were looking for a very specific gun. That is the same style gun that we're looking for. Same caliber, most likely the same brand, the same model.
At that moment, I was like, Jimmy's here. He's guiding us. He's telling us it's all here. He's not making it easy. He's making this puzzle, but it's slowly coming together. So immediately took the gun and had TBI process it. Within a couple hours, they were calling us back on, "Hey, this is the gun that was used in the homicide of Jimmy McClain." That does bring some emotion to you. You're like, oh my gosh, this work, this time, and we're going into 30 days here. I mean, nobody finds a gun used in a homicide in 30 days.
Police need to talk to Jamarius, but before they can track him down, they get an alarming call.
We have a call from Cumberland County Sheriff's Office, and the deputy there said, "Hey, listen, we just had something weird come in. A white female came running into our station. She was very distraught. She was in her pajamas, and that she said that she wanted to pass on some information, that her husband was upset because his nephew had admitted."
Detectives investigating the murder of Jimmy McClain have just received an unexpected call from a sheriff's office 5 hours away.
And the deputy there said a white female came running into our station. Her husband was upset because his nephew had admitted to killing a basketball coach. Her husband was Carla's brother, which was Dwayne's uncle.
Detectives are stunned. Dwayne's uncle is Donald Page, a known felon. Detectives bring him in, knowing they may only have one shot to get him to talk.
He was very, I'm not talking to you, I ain't got nothing to say.
Police remind him of one simple fact. If he's withholding information, that makes him an accessory to murder.
And all of a sudden, he said, look, my nephew said he did it.
Dwayne had, in fact, taken him aside and said, Uncle, I had to handle my business. And Donald said he looked at him and said, are you saying that you killed him? Dwayne said to him, I had to stand up for my mom.
Dwayne, he loved his mom. They were having some financial issues, and Dwayne thought that if this divorce could just be done with, I could get the money from the house. And I think Dwayne took it upon himself to do whatever he wanted to do, and which unfortunately led to the homicide.
There was tension between Jimmy and Dwayne already. So there was that divorce, money, financial implication, motive.
With an accessory charge hanging over his head, Donald agrees to testify against his nephew.
At that point, I called the prosecutor and told him what we had, and he said, I think it's time to go lock up Dwayne Moore for homicide.
On March 26, 2013, Dwayne Moore is charged with the murder of his own stepfather.
I'm telling you, he just had no remorse, no confessions. He just didn't have any care in the world whatsoever.
When I heard Dwayne had been charged with Jimmy's murder, I felt a lot of relief.
I was shocked to know that someone that he had influenced this long in this young man's life that would take his life.
It went deep to my core as far as emotionally. This was unbelievable because of who Jimmy was.
14 months later, Dwayne Moore stands before the Memphis judge and jury. The prosecution lays out what they believe happened the night of the murder.
Dwayne had it in his head that he was going over there to kill him. He knew that there was a key to the house that Carla might have forgot about. I think he waited until he saw Jimmy pull in, let himself in that front door. Pulled the gun out as soon as he saw Jimmy and started shooting. I think he did it in about 5 minutes at the most. I think he just went in there and started blasting away.
To try to imagine what Jimmy must have gone through in the final moments that he was living is extremely painful. The awful terror he must have felt, knowing that his life was about to end.
On June 27, 2014, Dwayne Moore is convicted and sentenced to 22 years in prison without the possibility of parole.
It hurts. It hurts that somebody thought so little of my family that they could take somebody so precious to us.
While Jimmy's family still misses him every day, his love for educating young people lives on.
To honor Jimmy's memory, we established a scholarship in his name at the University of Arkansas at Conway.
I think Jimmy would want to be remembered by being a godly man, a kind man, and a peaceful man.
That's what helps me to try to let the anger go. Don't be mad. Just thank God that he was here and that he was my brother for as long as he was.